So we got Penn State versus Oregon for the Big Ten championship. This was a championship game that nobody expected. We were expecting to see Ohio State versus Oregon part 2, but with Michigan dominating Ryan Day again, Penn State won last week. Here we are. And Oregon, to me, is a big mismatch for Penn State for several reasons. For one, the difference between these two teams offensively is night and day. Penn State only has one reliable receiver, which is Tyler Warren. Now, Tyler Warren, he's not just one receiver. He's kind of like 4 players in one. I mean, this dude can do freaking everything. He can play tight end, wide receiver, running back, fullback, wildcat, quarterback. If Penn State had 11 Tyler Warrens on their offense, they would dominate Oregon because Tyler Warren is an incredible player. And I'm going to be really interested in seeing how Dan Lanning and his defensive staff game plan for this man, because Tyler Warren, to me, is probably the most unstoppable player in college football, right behind Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty. If you have not seen Tyler Warren play all year long, you are in for a treat. I remember watching Penn State play USC, and I mean, it's like the dude, every time they threw the ball, it was going right to him. They knew it was going to him, and USC still couldn't do anything to stop it. Tyler Warren, I don't know what his parents gave him when he came out of the womb. I don't know if they stuck some steroids in his baby milk or whatever, but this dude is a freak. This is like Hercules meets Travis Kelce. I've never seen a player this magnificent in terms of he can just do everything. He's just like a Swiss Army knife for Penn State. But the problem with that is there's only one Tyler Warren. Where is the other production going to come from in Penn State's passing attack? Because they don't have good receivers. As a matter of fact, the lack of elite weapons that Penn State has on the outside has been their biggest Achilles heel. The 3 best weapons on offense, Tyler Warren, the running backs Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton, are all about it. Oregon, on the other hand, not only do they got really good receivers like Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart, but you also got a really good rushing attack. Oregon offensively, they got different ways they can move the football down the field on you. Penn State doesn't have that ability. You know who's going to get the ball when Penn State calls a passing play. It's going straight to Tyler Warren, and if they're not throwing the football, they're going to run it. Penn State's offense is really predictable with them lacking elite perimeter players. Another big advantage that Oregon has is coaching. James Franklin. I call him Little Game James Franklin for a reason, because every time he gets into these big-time matchups, Penn State always loses. Why do you think Michigan and Ohio State own him? And Dan Lanning is a top 3, top 5 head coach in the sport right now. He, right now, has turned Oregon into a monster. There is a clear gap between Oregon and everybody else in college football. And if you want a good indicator of how good of a coach Dan Lanning is, go rewatch the final 2 minutes of Oregon versus Ohio State when Dan Lanning intentionally committed a penalty, having 12 men on the field, because he knew it would help Oregon in terms of how Ohio State was trying to go about managing the clock in that situation. Dan Lanning is a fantastic football coach, and he knows how to get the most out of his players. Can James Franklin do the same? I'd rather bet on Dan Lanning before I bet on James Franklin in a game like this. And the defense for Oregon has a favorable matchup against a Penn State offense that is incredibly predictable, because it's only going to 1 or 2 people. Either it's going to Tyler Warren, or you're going to hand it off to whoever you have at running back at that time, rather it be Katron Allen or Nicholas Singleton. Penn State doesn't have a lot of variations in terms of counter punches that they can throw at you offensively. Now, Andy Nicky is a really creative offensive coordinator. Against USC, there was a play when Tyler Warren snapped the ball and then ran downfield and caught a touchdown. So they're going to have to get really creative with how they move Tyler Warren around, how they utilize Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton. But Penn State, to me, they're just so limited offensively compared to a team like the Ducks that just has so many weapons offensively, so many different ways to beat you. That's why I believe that Oregon is a huge mismatch in this game for Penn State, because Penn State just doesn't have the kind of diversity needed offensively for them not to be overly predictable by Oregon. So I'm expecting Oregon to win this game by at least 2 touchdowns. Give me Oregon 34-17. And Drew Aller, you know, like, I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I think he's pretty good, but this guy is a little bit overrated. You know, I have people hit me up every day and ask me, JT, where do you think Drew Aller would get drafted if he declares for next year's draft? I don't view Drew Aller as a first round or second round pick. I view him more as a third rounder, fourth round guy who has all the physical traits to become a high level quarterback at the next level. But he's really inconsistent. Against some of the better teams that Penn State has played this season, he has not been that good. Against USC, he threw for 391 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, but he gave away 3 interceptions. Against Ohio State, that was probably his worst game of the season. 1 interception, 12 of 20 for 146 yards, and he didn't really look that hot against Illinois neither. Drew Aller, James Franklin, I think they're a really good duo for each other because they both are overrated. You want the most overrated quarterback head coach combo in college football? You're going to see it in this game with James Franklin and Drew Aller. These guys for the last 2 years have just not played that good against some of the better teams on their schedule. And if Penn State can't beat Ohio State, and that game could have been way more one-sided than what it was if you didn't have Will Howard making goofy decisions. Dylan Gabriel is much better at managing the game, limiting mistakes than what Will Howard is. So if you can't compete with Ohio State, what makes you think that you're going to be able to have a chance at pulling off this upset against Penn State? Other than, you know, it's college football, anything can happen, but Dan Lanning always has his teams up for these big-time games. You know, James Franklin, on the other hand, it's complete opposite. Who are you more willing to bet your money on? Penn State or Dan Lanning? If I had to bet $1,000 right now on one of these 2 teams, I'd rather bet Oregon. If I have to lose money, I'd rather lose it betting on Dan Lanning than get burnt again by a guy who continuously comes up short in these big-time games. So I love Oregon to get the win, and I think it's going to be pretty emphatic how they win this one.